important than the air you breathe. There's a saying out here, if the communists come, it's better to be red than dead. That's what they used to say. Those were the people who were willing to give in to communism and just say, okay, government control is okay, we're just going to go with it. It's better to be red than dead. Well, guess what? Give me liberty or what? Patrick Henry said. He said what? Do you know? Preston, what did he say? What did Patrick Henry say? He said, give me liberty or give me death. One of the founding fathers. Why was he so adamant about his liberty, about his freedom? Because he understands that man must be free to resolve the angelic conflict. And without your freedom, there is no resolution. The angelic conflict is put off. It's put on hold for a while. And so what do you think God will do? If freedom is corrupted, the pressure will come until man once again is free. And so freedom is the most precious thing that you have as a human being. Now, our freedom as Americans was given by God, but it's maintained through military victory. And so we see that our external enemies, aggressors, are fought against by our military men and women in our internal aggression. The people who would destroy us from the inside, like criminals. Criminals want to take away your freedom. You know how they do that? They violate your volition. You know how they would do that? They rape, they milk, they pillage, they take your money. That would be your property. Actually, we're going to talk about that. They would violate you. Okay, so they destroy freedom. They destroy your property. They steal it. They take it away. They destroy your privacy. They break into your residence. They break into your car. Those are private areas. They destroy authority because they break the law in doing so. Guess what? We have policemen and women to maintain our freedom inside America. So our freedom is given by God, but maintained by military victory from external aggression, and maintained by the policeman on the street through internal aggression. Now, when we catch our criminals, they go through our justice system, and so that's also involved. So tonight we're going to look at the highest commendation. That's the title of your notes. The highest commendation. If you'd have been on earth when Jesus was here, what do you think he'd had to say about you? He just took a quick sampling of your life. The Son of God. What do you think he'd have to say about you? I mean, that's a real question. What if Jesus was here now? What do you think he'd have to say about you? Well, Jesus, in his time on earth, issued many citations of human character. In other words, he just made an overall judgment of someone's character, and he talked about it. And I should go ahead and say, as Christians, we should be able to evaluate the character of a man. It's not judging, it's evaluating their character. And how do you evaluate someone's character? By what they're thinking. I want to know what you believe. That's how you evaluate the character of a man. So Jesus Christ, during his time on earth, he issued many citations of human character. In Matthew 23:17, Jesus called the religious leaders foolish and blind. And so he looked at religion of the day. He looked at the scribes and the Pharisees, and he said, "You foolish and you blind." You think that was good? How would you like to be called foolish and blind by the Son of God? That's not too good, is it? No, so we don't want to be religious. We don't want to get tied up in works. We don't want to get tied up in religion. We're to be a spiritual people. In John 19:11, he issued another citation of human character. Pilate Jesus was standing in front of Pilate. Jesus was tied up. He'd been beaten. He'd been whipped. He'd been abused. He'd been spat upon and beaten mercilessly where you could not even recognize him. And Pilate said to Jesus, he says, "Do you not understand I have the power to set you free?" Pilate's looking at the Son of God. He doesn't understand it's the Son of God. He says, "Do you not understand I have the power to set you free?" The authority. Pilate's a politician, see. And so to the seemingly self-promoted politician Pilate, he proclaimed, "You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above." So Pilate thinks he's self-promoted. I'm so good, I've got this high position. And Jesus says to him, you'd have no position at all if God had not placed you here. And Jesus says to his disciples, could I not bring 12 legions of angels down to conquer these people if I wanted to be set free? It wasn't God's plan. And so he said to Pilate, you'd have no power at all, you big head. The third person I want to talk about, Jesus gave a citation of character, is the Roman Centurion. This is a military man. Only to the Roman Centurion did Jesus pay the highest compliment. Have you ever thought about who did Jesus give the highest compliment to? You say his disciples. He called his disciples stupid. He said, you're hard of heart. You can't learn it. He even told Peter, even stuck his finger in Peter's face, and he said, get thee behind me, Satan. He called him Satan because he had a human viewpoint. So who did Jesus give the highest citation of human character to? Not one of his disciples. He gave it to a fighting man. He gave it to a Roman centurion. And so we have to find out why, don't we? Why would Jesus give the highest commendation of his hypostatic union to one man? And Jesus says to the Roman centurion, he says, assuredly, point of doctrine, I say to you, I communicate, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And this is the passage we're going to look at. We're going to look at some points underneath here. In verse 5, now when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him. Now Jesus is actually about 30 miles away from this guy's outpost. We're going to find out he traveled. A centurion is a Roman military leader. This guy would have been proven in battle. He would have been proven in training. And he would have been over 100 men. A centurion, he was over a command of 100 guys. And so this guy's pretty high up in the ranks. A Roman centurion came to him pleading, saying, Lord, here's the first clue we get. He calls Jesus not rabbi, which means teacher. He doesn't call him man, anthropos. He doesn't call him a leader. He doesn't call him by any other name. He calls him Kurios, Lord. And it points to the fact that the centurion was a believer in Jesus Christ. He understood that Jesus was God, that he was the hypostatic union, the unique person of the universe. Not quite like man because he was God, not quite like God because he was man. He was perfect God and perfect man, welded together in one person forever, the unique person of the universe. And the centurion comes to Jesus Christ and he says, Lord, Kurios. So we have a born-again believer here, and we understand his humility. He understood the exalted position of Jesus Christ. My servant. The word for my servant could also be translated my son. Lord, my son is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. And so his son was at home 30 miles away, and he is very ill. And we know he was ill to the point of death. The centurion knew that his son would die. And so Jesus recognized this man's faith. He recognized his character. And in verse 7, Jesus says to him, he communicates to him, I will come and heal him. So Jesus agrees to come and heal the man's son. And so you would think, well, this is good. Jesus is going to walk 30 miles. That's from here to Amity, friend. Alpine, Amity. That's a pretty good distance. We're talking about a day or two at least on hard walking. I will come and heal him. And so we have the centurion's answer. And this is why Jesus gave him the highest commendation of any human. The centurion answered and said, Lord, Kurios, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. Now, I want to give you another point of doctrine. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. This centurion recognized his total depravity. He had been born to a human father. That means he had a genetically perpetuated sin nature. At the moment of his physical birth, he was imputed with Adam's original sin. And after that, he had committed personal sins. And he says, I am not worthy. Do you know what Isaiah said when he saw the Lord in Isaiah chapter 6? He said, I am from a sinful race. I live among a sinful people. And Jesus, he recognized when he was in front of Jesus that he was sinful. And so the Roman centurion here, he recognized Jesus as Messiah, and he recognized himself as part of a human race that was totally depraved. He says, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof or come in my house. You are a king, and I am a slave. I am a servant. But only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. Now, this centurion understood authority. He understood that Jesus had the ability to heal his son. Divine omnipotence. And now he gives reasoning behind. For I also am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go. And he goes. We're going to find out why he goes. And to another, come. And he comes. And to my servant, do this. And he does it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled. I love this. You know, when you hear something good, when you hear about somebody making an application of doctrine, how much joy it brings you. When you hear about somebody who has had a breakthrough, it makes you happier than it makes them sometimes. You see them finally getting it, and you see the application in their life. And Jesus has this moment. He says, my goodness, this guy's got it. He marvels and he says, yes, finally a member of the human race that has it. He marveled and he said to those who followed, he's got this guy in front of him, and he looks around at his disciples who were following him, and he's going to make a lesson. He's going to teach a lesson about this guy, the centurion. He says, assuredly, it means matter-of-factly, I say to you, I communicate to you a point of doctrine. I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. That means out of all believers in Jerusalem, in and around Israel, he had not found somebody who was built up in doctrine, who had faith like the centurion. He's even talking to his disciples at the time. Verse 11, and I say to you that many will come from east and west. This means Gentiles. When you think of the Jewish people here, you think about those who are in Jerusalem. And so he's talking about Gentile believers. And sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. I can't wait till the millennium, because I'm going to get to sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're going to share a steak. Yes, there will be meat in the millennium, and so we're going to have a big party, and you're going to get to talk to Moses. You're going to get to talk to Joseph. You're going to get to talk to Elijah. All these great believers of the Old Testament. And Jesus says, verse 12, but the sons of the kingdom, that means the Jewish people for whom the salvation was originated with, the originators of the Scripture, but the sons of the kingdom, the Jewish people, will be cast out into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And this means that the unbelieving Jews are going to go to hell. And he says, this guy has it. He has the principles in his soul that make him a great believer. But the Jewish people who have been blessed with the canon of Scripture, they've been blessed with the Mosaic Law, they have synagogues all around, and yet they're going to go to hell because they reject me as the Messiah. They're trying to get to heaven by keeping the Mosaic Law. Verse 13, then Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, and as you have believed, so let it be done for you. And his son was healed that same hour. And so it took him a good day, 2 days to get back, unless he was on horseback, and it would have taken him at least a half a day to do that. But his people told him, yes, about the same time, your son was healed. And so we see here that Jesus gave the highest commendation to any man walking the face of the earth to a Gentile believer who was in the military. Now, we have to ask ourselves some questions. What were the characteristics that made this man so great? He said, I'm not worthy. So we're not talking about somebody who was great in the human realm. What made this man great in the spiritual realm? Number one, he had genuine humility. He was genuinely humble. He understood his own limitations. And he understood that Jesus was the Messiah, the King, the ruler of the world. And so he calls Jesus Lord. So the first point is that he had genuine humility. Now, I'm going to ask you young people something. When you're talking to an older person and you're having a conversation with them, you say, yeah, man. You say, yes, sir. You know what that is? Genuine humility. It's respect for those in authority over you. The Roman centurion didn't come up to Jesus and he said, hey, man, I know you be having those powers and stuff. Won't you be healing my servant at the house? No. He took a knee in front of Jesus and he said, Lord. And if you've ever seen a centurion, the man would have taken his helmet off And they carried, when they walked into the presence of someone, they would take their helmet off their head and they would carry it under their arm. And when they came before someone who was over them, they would take a knee, they would have their helmet under their arm, and they would bow before them. And they had complete honor in the presence of those who demanded respect, who earned respect. And so we see here that the Roman centurion had genuine humility, and we have to ask ourselves, do we have genuine humility in our own souls? And if we don't, guess what? There's another type of humility for you. Enforced humility. And God gives you, He will give you enforced humility in your life until you learn how to be genuinely humble. And He does that through discipline. He does that through authority. And you may be under a tough teacher, a tough coach, a tough pastor, a tough parent, a tough police officer, a tough judge. But one day, through enforced humility, you will learn genuine humility. And if you do not learn genuine humility, God will kill you. He will take you out. And our nation is a nation right now of disrespectful people. I'm not just talking about young people. I'm talking about older people too. Disrespectful. And so we're facing a great problem right now with humility. This centurion understood the total depravity of the human race. He understood the sin nature. Right now we've got a big problem in the United States of utopianism. Everybody believes they can create a false millennium. If we only had perfect environment. If you'd only stop drinking 44-ounce soda pops, you'd be perfectly healthy. Yeah. Yeah. If we could only create this new legislation that would corral you somehow, we could create the perfect race. They don't understand the sin nature, and you can't legislate the sin nature. You can't. You can only punish it when it breaks the law. And so the centurion, he had been through battles, he had been through hard times, he understood the human race is totally depraved, and the Lord is perfect. He says, I am not worthy. He understood strict discipline. The Roman military had the strictest discipline that you could ever imagine. Let's say you wanted to quit. You're in the Roman military, you decide you're going to quit first. I'm out. You say, I'm done, man. I know I signed up for this, but I'm through with this. I can't handle all the authority. This person's in charge and he's imperfect. They're treating me bad. This person's in charge and they're imperfect. Guess what you learn when you get into authority? Humans are imperfect. And if you want to be a part of a perfect group, guess what? As soon as you join, it's imperfect. Because you're imperfect. And so you have to look at the world and you have to understand total depravity. And you have to understand strict discipline. Now, if you decide you want to quit the Roman army, you were in groups of 10 men. You had the century, the 100 men. But they came down to groups of men and about 10. You would form a guard. These are the men you fought elbow to elbow with. And let's just say you decided you were going to mutiny. You were going to skip out. The 10 men that you fought with would strip all their equipment off, and they were required by law, if you said you were going to quit, They were required by law to beat you to death with their fists. And they beat you and beat you with their fists. They couldn't use rocks. They couldn't use swords. They couldn't use any instruments. And they were to brutally beat you to death with blows from the fist until you stopped breathing. Over and over. And so your best friends had to kill you if you decided to quit. Now, if you had to do that to your friends, what do you think would happen to your enemies? Those were fighting men. This guy knew strict discipline. And yet Jesus, he's part of this organization. Brutal, strict discipline. And yet Jesus offers this guy the highest commendation of the whole human race. I'm going to tell you what, our fighting men right now are being held in disdain by our current leadership. They're holding up Hollywood higher than they're holding up our fighting men. We've got military heroes coming back, they're treating like trash. We've got guys out here that are getting their limbs blown off, and we're sending $250 million to Egypt, to the Muslim Brotherhood. We're buying them tanks and fighter jets. And here are guys that are coming home and they can't work. They're coming back. And I'm going to tell you what, Jesus Christ had it right. These men deserve respect and the highest honor. And you and I understand that. The rest of the world does not. And so he had strict discipline and he understood discipline. And when he says, I have men and I tell them to go. Do you think they go? When this guy told them to go? Do you think they turned around and said, no, not today? Whoa! Strict discipline, see? He says, I tell one to come, and he comes. Yes, sir, he comes. And I bet you he half steps on the way, doesn't he? No problem, sir. Yes, sir, sir. Strict discipline. And I tell him to do that, and he does it. And then he also understood absolute authority. The strict chain of command. And immediate obedience. I spelled that wrong. There, I will try. The Roman soldiers actually had a code that they followed. And under a strict series of discipline, they believed that a part of a life of discipline was teaching and learning and instruction. And so these men were perfectly prepared to handle instructions. They believed that a life of discipline was a life of training that corrects, that molds or perfects the mental faculties or moral character. This is part of their belief about discipline. They believed discipline was an orderly or prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior. They did it the same way every time, and they did it in a way of honor. They believed discipline was control gained by enforcing obedience or order. And so they lived lives of discipline. I have to ask you, how is your discipline? See, we have a lot of freedom as Americans. We may not have disciplined lives because of it. Nobody's bossing us around. How are we disciplined as Christians? We have to understand that Self-discipline is a fruit of the Spirit. And so discipline is a characteristic. Also, the Roman centurions practiced frugalness. This is one thing the military will teach you, how to get by on very little. You have to ask yourself, what does it take for me to get by on? What can I live on? See, we have a life of plenty. The Romans, if you had been in the Roman military, you would get your daily ration of grain. And part of discipline would have been, you don't get good grain today, you get bad grain. And so on a good grain day, you may have got some wheat and maybe some bread or something like that. And on a bad day, but you may have gotten some old oats that have been mildewed, or some bad grain, just enough to keep you alive. And so they learned frugal lifestyle. And so we see some of the characteristics that earned the highest commendation from Jesus Christ, and it was towards a fighting man. Now, I said all that to say this. The thing that is under attack right now in the United States is anybody who is willing to fight for anything they believe. If you are willing to fight for this right here, I'm going to tell you what, as a born-again believer, you better be willing to fight for it. If you are willing to die for your Bible, you'll be called a terrorist by the left, because you're willing to die for this right here. You'll be called a terrorist, a right wingnut. That's what they call you. If you will be, let's just say, let's bring it on home to patriotism. If you are willing to fight and die to protect the Constitution of the United States, you'd be called a right-wing extremist, a terrorist. Right now, the left is busy labeling me as a terrorist. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm the most peace-loving person you'll ever meet. I don't want to get in an argument with anybody. I don't want to fight with anybody. I like to go away from that stuff. I don't want to be in the middle of it. I'm a peace-loving person. I want to be as Christ-like as possible. You can't go around getting in fights and be Christ-like. But the left right now is trying to paint the person who would stand up for the Constitution as a terrorist. And what we're going to find out is a lot of people are going to say, you know what, that scares me. I don't want to be labeled as a terrorist. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But I'm going to tell you what. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start shouting louder. And I'm going to start blowing the horn. And I'm going to start calling out who needs calling out. And I'm going to start talking about our Constitution and what the Founding Fathers believed, and the Bible, and patriotism, and how we ought to be treating our military men and women, and how we ought to be treating our police men and women. Because that's what's right. And when we fight on the side of what's right, guess what? We have a ring of fire around us. And no man can touch us. It doesn't matter what they do to the body, they can't touch my soul. And so we have to stand up as Americans, we have to stand up as patriots, and we have to stand up and say what is right, even though it may not be popular, and even though someone may call you crazy.